Nuknech, Jen och Pongridge and singing in Klingon, och Deutsch Widge.
Welcome to the Finding Favorites podcast, where we explore your favorite things without using an algorithm. Here's your host, Leah Jones.
Hello and welcome back to Finding Favorites. I'm your host, Leah Jones. It is Sunday, December 20th, if you can believe it. Hard to believe the year is drawing to a close. And things are, I think, starting to slow down for folks. I'm seeing a lot of people signing off of online school for the rest of the calendar year, which is exciting. Even more exciting are the number of friends who have started their COVID vaccine. I knew I had a lot of friends who worked in hospitals and healthcare, but it wasn't until the vaccine started rolling out that I realized just how many people are nurses, social workers, doctors, how many people I know on the front lines. And I'm so grateful for your work and so excited that you are starting to see this vaccine reach your workplaces. Of course, I'm hopeful that current doses that are sitting in warehouses across the country get to you sooner rather than later. This week on the podcast, I have Jen Usellis. Jen and I went to Millikan University together, class of 99, Go Big Blue. And as you'll hear us say on the podcast, we've kept up with each other online, but we don't think we've seen each other since we graduated. She sent me a note on Instagram and said, "Hey, can I come on your podcast and talk about Klingon, singing pop songs in Klingon?" And I said, "Yes, please." So we recorded yesterday and you're hearing it today. And on January 1st, she is launching her Kickstarter. So when that Kickstarter launches, I will be sure to come back and update the show notes with the link to the current Kickstarter. But in the show notes, you'll find links to videos she references about her Klingon pop songs, shows she's been on, podcast episodes, and ways to keep up with her online. If you were celebrating Hanukkah over the last week or so, I hope it was meaningful and you felt the lights of Hanukkah come into your life. If you are preparing for Christmas and all that means this year, I hope that you have found some ways to do safe and meaningful celebrations with your friends or family, whoever is in that circle for you. And I hope that you are able to continue as we hit these last few months of waiting for the vaccine to be widespread, that you are still able to stay home and stay safe. Wear your mask and wash your hands and keep sharing your favorite things. That's all I got for you today. Enjoy this conversation with Jen Usellis and how she became the Klingon pop warrior. Hello and welcome to Finding Favorites. I'm your host, Leah Jones, and this is the podcast where we learn about people's favorite things and get recommendations without using an algorithm. I am very excited today to introduce you to my guest, Jen Usellis. How are you, Jen?
I'm good. Hi, Leah.
So Jen is the third Millikan alumna.
Alumni.
Jen is the third graduate of Millikan University to join me on this podcast. I feel like I'm in competition with the alumni. Have you been getting these like threatening postcards from the alumni office?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Verify your information.
Verify your information. I'm like, you can find me. I'm not that hard to find.
Yeah, try Google.
Yeah.
My sister Rain, who was in our class, she called, and they're trying to sell a $300 book.
That's okay. So I'm really glad you said that because I the main reason I haven't responded to these cards is because I got one. I started getting them maybe last summer for my high school. And I was talking to some of my old high school friends about it, and they were like, don't bother calling. They're just going to try to sell you a thing. And I'm like, okay. So then when these started rolling in, I was like, oh, Milliken, curse you for using the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, do I have a Who's Who Milliken alumni directory from like 2000? Yes, I do. They got me when I was a baby graduate.
Right.
So, but yeah, so it's been, I mean, I gotta say, like, because we were both in class of 99, right?
Right. Yep.
And while I have seen you on the internet regularly for like the last 15 years, I don't think we've seen each other in person probably since graduation.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's and it's so weird. I moved to the Twin Cities about a year after I graduated.
Okay.
I got picked up. I started doing a children's theater that toured. And when my tours were over, that theater company was based in the Twin Cities. So I had such a good time. Like when I was rehearsing there, we rehearsed up there and then they sent us out on the road.
Okay.
But I really loved the city, found out some other people from college were moving up there. And because I moved to Chicago and immediately started touring, I didn't have roots in the theater community here the way that I might have if I had been here for a year or two. So I made a call. Our lease was coming up on being done. And I called my friends who were up there and I'm like, hey, do you want another roommate? And so they said yes. And I'm like, all right, well, I moved up to the Twin Cities with like $200 and my 1989 Camaro. And
that's amazing.
And so yeah, a great winter car, let me tell you, a rear-wheel drive.
I can imagine a Camaro not having its best life in the Twin Cities.
Yeah, no. Rear-wheel drive in the middle of winter. You get real good at learning how to pull out of a fishtail, let me tell you.
Oof. And then were you in Florida for a while?
I did not end up down there.
Okay.
I stayed up there for 8 years. I met my now husband living there.
Yeah.
And I was working, I was a customer service manager and I was miserable and I really wanted to study improv. And I was just not happy in my day job, found out that my day job was actually going to be shutting down operations up there. And so I had kind of an out in a way, and it was sort of the right kick in the pants. And he's actually, my husband is originally from Rochester, New York. So we were both technically transplants.
Sure.
And go ahead.
And I have found from other friends who have moved to the Twin Cities, Minnesota can be difficult to make grown-up friends.
Yeah.
Did you guys find that, or were you able to like find some people?
I kind of lucked out because I got really involved in the theater community up there.
Yeah.
And it's a really tight knit theater community. There's less sort of equity theater and stuff like that.
Sure.
But the theater community itself is really vibrant. And so if I would audition and I would just go and audition and do shows. And I didn't do a lot of like back-to-back stuff. While I was up there, I actually started singing in bands, and which I wasn't really singing. I always loved to sing. When I came to Milliken, when I was making that decision, I was either going to go into vocal performance or acting. And I kind of decided, I'm like, I took voice lessons in high school and I always sang, and I really fell in love with acting my senior year of high school. I got some like really meaty roles for a high schooler.
Yeah.
And and not musical theater, but just like really beautiful roles. And the last show that I did in high school was Dancing at Lunasa, and Dancing at Lunasa ended up being one of the last shows that I did at Millikan as well. And so it was this incredible bookend to acting, because that show was the show that made me go, you know what? I don't think I want to worry about vocal performance. I can get a vocal minor or something like that. I really want to study this craft. And so then, yeah, I went to Millikan for theater, and
but not musical theater.
But not musical theater. I hated dancing. I didn't want to do the dance credits.
Okay.
and so, yeah, I just really wanted to focus in on acting, and I'm really glad I made that choice. It was a good choice for me, and it just got me more comfortable on stage. And then when I moved to the Twin Cities, I would go to karaoke nights with my roommates, and we ended up becoming friends with somebody who did she ran a karaoke business up there. And so she would ask me if I would come when she'd get new bars. She's like, it's always helpful to have good singers with me when I go to a new bar. And so she asked if I would come to these bars with her. And so
you guys were like hustling people.
Yeah.
You were her like ringer, like, oh wait, this is a karaoke that attracts good singers. We want to come back. We want to tell our friend, like, that is amazing. So she made you like a magnet in the middle of her marketing plan.
Right. And so she'd like buy me drinks and I would buy my own drinks. And then there was this one week where she had like 3 new bars. And so I went to like 3 of her shows that week. And I had multiple people come up to me at each bar and say, "Do you sing in a band?" And I'm like, no. No, that's silly. And I just, go back to drinking. And by the 5th or 6th person, you're kind of like, wait a minute, maybe I could join a band.
Yeah.
That's actually not a bad idea.
Right.
So I found a covers band that was auditioning, and I went and auditioned and I got in. And
that's so fun.
And that was in my first like 3-4 months living in the Twin Cities. And those guys, I sang with that band the whole 8 years that I lived up there. That band was like my family. It was a covers band. They taught me everything that I know about singing singing in a band and gigging and stuff like that. I learned because of being in the Express Band. They have my heart forever. In fact, my upcoming EP, 2 of the musicians from the Express Band actually play on my new Pop Warrior EP.
That's fantastic. Okay, so you're in the Twin Cities for 8 years. Your job is your operations are going to shut down. Your now husband is from Rochester. You're from Illinois, or you're from Illinois, right?
Yep.
Okay, and you're just like, where do we go now? Because we could go anywhere.
Yeah. And I really wanted to study improv. So it was Chicago. He's like, we need to get you home. We need to get you to Chicago so you can study improv and be happy. Like we need to get Jen happy. And so we moved back here in 2008, and I took improv at IO. I went through the whole IO training program, and by the end of, I think probably level 2, level 3, I was like, you know what? This isn't really for me, but I am not a quitter. I am such a Taurus. I am such a Taurus. I will power through. I'm like, it's detrimental to my mental health sometimes how determined I am to see something through, but I'm like, I'm going to finish this. And I
also
went through.
Wasn't there a possibility that level 4 might be the time when it clicks, when you're like, I like it. So
right.
Can all these thousands of people be wrong?
Right,
yes,
right.
They can. They can be wrong.
They can be wrong. I love short form improv. Long form improv gives me stage fright. It's.
So you like a comedy sports, like a games, whose line is it anyway? That type of short form.
Yeah, that's great. I can shine it like a diamond on in short form, but long form, oh my God, I got my first real bout of stage fright during my level 5 like performances, our actual like, and I walked on stage and I just froze, and I took the next week off. I told my team, I was like, I'm really sorry. I need to walk away. And I was acting. I was acting a lot more at that point too. So I was doing some shows when we moved here and stuff like that. And then one of my friends from the Twin Cities called me. He's like, we're moving to Chicago and we're going to bring a Klingon Christmas Carol to Chicago.
Okay.
And that is where my entire like 2009, 2010 is where like everything changed.
Wow. That's okay. And these friends from Minneapolis who had a Klingon Christmas Carol, had you ever participated in it there, or did they create it in the window when you had already moved away?
I think they created it it was either the year before I moved away or the year I moved away. And I was like, that's really funny. Ha ha ha. Their theater company, Commedia Beauregard, specialized in it, which is not, it doesn't exist anymore, but they specialized in translated works. And so it was a Christmas fundraiser. It was created as a 40-minute Christmas fundraiser. And they did it one year. They had a lot of fun. It did really well. So they did it again, added some scenes, and then they brought it to Chicago. They actually had at that point fleshed it out to almost like an 85-minute, almost 90-minute show. And they brought it to Chicago. They were like, we're bringing it to Chicago.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
I think we're just going to go ahead and segue right into your favorite thing. Okay, so they're like, Jen, we're bringing this Christmas Carol. You used to sing in a cover band. We know you can sing. We know you can act. Was it an offer? Do you want to roll? Or was it like, do you know people?
It was mostly, I knew Chris, who created the show and was the artistic director of the theater company. And he knew me from shows that I had done in the Twin Cities, and he knew that I sang. But Klingon Christmas Carol actually wasn't really a singing show. Oh. But it is entirely in the Klingon language, which is in its own strange way. It's like doing opera, but speaking is essentially what you're doing, because only about 45 to 50 people in the world, and that might even be generous, speak Klingon fluently.
All right.
So it really is you have to learn it. And I'm like, I always loved black box theater. I always loved niche theater and sort of smaller conceptual theater. And so I was like, what do I need to do to get cast in this show? And he asked me, he goes, are you allergic to latex? And I'm like, no. And he goes, well, then come and audition. And it was pretty much, I picked up the language pretty quickly, just the pronunciation I was able to pick up pretty quickly. And I got cast. I was cast as Mrs. Cratchit that first year. And in that it was in Chicago. So I did it in 2010, and then I did it again in 2011. And it was, the one thing that I was really proud of when I did that show was I took over a bunch of social media stuff. So I started tweeting about it, and we managed to get some really good traction. And then also there was a moment in the show where I did get to sing a song, and I sang the Warrior Anthem, which is the Klingon Warrior Anthem. And all the recordings that I could find of the song were not good. Like the pronunciation was bad. And I had just learned how to pronounce this language. And I'm like, God, this pronunciation is terrible. So it was my mission when I sang the song in the show. I'm like, I am going to nail this song with the pronunciation. I want anybody who knows this song to come here and be like, that's that song. They recognize it. And I want anybody who knows the language who hears it to be like, holy crap, somebody's actually singing it right. Like I wanted.
So had it ever been sung in a Star Trek episode?
I think it ends up appearing at like the end of an episode. I think it's actually featured in one of the games more heavily than it's actually featured in an episode. But Mark Okrand, the creator of the language, actually wrote the lyrics for it, and so it is technically owned by CBS. And yeah, I sang that song and I loved it, and I was so proud of it. And I did get some of the members of the Klingon language community came to the show that first year and were like, "You sang the Warrior Anthem and you sang it right." And I was like, "Yes,
nice."
That was all I cared about. And
were you the only person that year with a song? Or
yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much. Like that was sort of the one like song of the show. It was me. And it was more like we were coming in and we were like bustling around the table and getting dinner ready. And so we're singing Koi Kalish Puklod, and like, you know, just joking around and singing this little song. So
you do those shows, you sing for the first time. I was texting with Amy Guth, and she said, tell her I said, Dabuk Lodi Yi Sha O.
Yeshuv, yes. Dabuk Lodi Yeshuv. Machka. Yes. Yeah, that's right. Amy guest starred 1 year. That's amazing.
Yeah, she said she had a walk on, and that was the line that you coached her on. So
yes, yeah, I did the show. It's really stressful because you're doing a show at the holidays. And so doing a show anytime is already stressful, but doing a show at the holidays when you're trying to, you know, make travel plans, or you want to make travel plans, you want to get your tree up, you want to, you know, or celebrate your holiday, or, you know, all of those things, and do your shopping. And, you know, it was really stressful. So I did it for 2 years, and then I'm like, I need to take a year off. And so I took a year off, and with the hope that it was like, oh, maybe I'll go back or I'll re-audition again. And ended up, it was a couple years. And then the improvised, I got a message from Chris that was like, hey, the Improvised Star Trek podcast, who, if you've never listened to the Improvised Star Trek podcast, you don't need to know a thing about Star Trek to enjoy. It's basically The Office. Like, it's the worst starship in Starfleet.
Okay.
Trying to do missions, and it's all improvised, and it's and some of the best improvisers in Chicago were in that show. They actually ran for 10 years. They just ended like a year or two ago.
Wow.
But they were looking for somebody. They had an episode where one of the improvisers made this very specific, very, very specific mention of the song Kiss Me by Sixpence None the Richer. And by the end of the episode, they needed that song in Klingon.
Sure.
And so they messaged Chris, because they're like, oh, no big deal. We'll just grab a copy of the Klingon dictionary and we'll translate it. And they open up the dictionary. They're like, oh, crap, no, that's not going to happen. So they reached out to the Klingon Christmas Carol folks, got in touch with Chris, and were like, hey, we could use some help translating this song. And he's like, sure, no problem. So we got a bunch of people, they got together, they translated the song, gave it back to the Improvised Star Trek folks. They're like, great, well, now we'll get this recorded. They opened it up and they looked at it and they were like, oh, crap, we can't do this. Go back to Chris, and they're like, do you have somebody who could sing this? Because this just looks like nonsense to us. And he's like, actually, I think I might know somebody. And so Chris got in touch with me and he said, hey, the Improvised Star Trek is looking for somebody to sing Sixpence None the Richer's Kiss Me in Klingon for them for their podcast. Would you be interested or can I give them your name? I was like, yes,
Wow.
I would love to dip my toes back in the Klingon pool. And the thing is that up to this point, like I really wasn't that in, I hadn't up to getting cast in the show. I really wasn't even a Star Trek fan. My husband had been trying for years to get me to watch Star Trek. And I was just like, no.
He got his wish.
He finally got his wish, and I think now he almost has regret in his heart. And so I'm just like watching some episodes here and there, and doing my thing. And I was like, yeah, I would love to dip my toes back in the Klingon pool. That would be great. So they send me the lyrics. I start practicing the song. We record the song. I go in. I go, actually, and we're working on it. I'm like, oh, I have an idea for a harmony line. And so we record a harmony. We just I'm just like screwing around and I'm having a good time. And we finish it and we're listening back to it. And it sounds good. It sounded pretty good. And we're laughing. And somebody in the room, I can't remember if it was Nick Wagner or Chris Rathjen, were like, we should make or we should make a music video. Wouldn't it be funny if we made a music video? And so we were like, yeah, we should. Ha, 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 ha. So like 2-3 weeks later, I go back over after the song is done, jump around in front of a green screen in Klingon ridges and this goofy pink dress, the like fuzzy pink crazy dress. And like 2 or 3 weeks after that, it was right around my birthday, I think in 2013, the video goes out on YouTube. And we're thinking, our friends will watch this. It'll be really funny. The Klingon language community will get a kick out of it. It'll be, funny, haha. It'll be great. We got picked up by the Mary Sue.
Oh, wow.
Like, almost immediately.
Yeah.
And within like 48 hours, we had actually probably about 24 to 36 hours, we had almost like 75,000 views. And within 48 hours, we had 100,000 views. And we were just like, what the shit is happening right now?
Which I think is, so you said 2013?
Yeah.
People listening to this with 2020 ears on, those YouTube numbers in 7 years ago, that is something kicking off and going viral.
Right.
Like something on TikTok today, they guarantee you they'll put it in front of X number of people or whatever, like, but that really would have been like blowing something out of the water 7 years ago on YouTube.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's still like it went. I always say like it went modestly viral, like, by compared, and it was all organic. I mean, there was nothing bought and paid for with kids. Like nothing was bought and paid for with it. It was today it has like 250,000 maybe views still. And so like it's picked up over 7 years, another like 150,000 views or so. And like people still find it randomly. The episode that it was in for Improvised Star Trek was absolutely hilarious. It was called Today is a Good Day to Cry. It was very funny. But it was only ever supposed to be this little like background thing where at the end of the episode, they were like, computer, change this to Klingon, the original Klingon. And then it just was supposed to play in the background. And it just became this other thing. And I was like, man, it'd be really funny if there were some other song, like other pop songs in Klingon. Like what other funny pop, like what else would it be funny to sing in Klingon? And actually with Kiss Me, the translation of Kiss Me is Chitchop. That's Chitchop is the what is Kiss Me in Klingon, but it actually means bite me. There's no word for kiss in Klingon. And so the translation's actually very funny in and of itself.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I wonder if there's any other songs that people have translated. So I kind of asked around a little bit, and it turned out somebody had translated Britney Spears' Baby One More Time.
Okay.
I'm like, oh, that's cute and funny. Ha ha ha. And then like, little things trickled in, but I was really busy at that point. I was working full time. I was actually singing in a band that was doing pretty well. And we were so like I had other stuff that I was involved in. So it kind of got put on the back burner. And I was also like, if I'm going to do this and actually record more songs, I want to do it. I've sung in bands. I'm a musician. I want to give it the right treatment. I want to treat it well. I don't want it to just be like some crappy recording that I did with a shitty podcast mic and a bad karaoke track. Like I want to really think about it.
Yeah.
So
if it's going to go beyond being a bit.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like flash forward to a year later, I had quit the band that I was in, drama. And and I'm like, I've got some time on my hands. You know what? I want to see if I can make this happen. So I got in touch with some musicians that I'd worked with previously. And so we set up some rehearsals. And at that point I had 3 songs. I still had Kiss Me. And the recording that we did was just done to a karaoke track. So I was like, I would love to re-record this with musicians.
Yeah.
I had Baby One More Time and I had My Heart Will Go On, the Celine Dion song. So I had what felt like this like trifecta of fantastic 90s schmaltzy pop music.
Yes.
And I'm like, but if I'm going to do an EP, like if I'm going to record it and do a CD and maybe think about doing a Kickstarter to kind of help produce it a little bit, like I want at least 4 songs. Like I want like a good 4-song EP. And right around that time, one of my friends in the Twin Cities was like, that I'd done theater with said, why has nobody translated Let It Go into Klingon?
Uh-huh.
And they tagged me on Facebook and they were like, Jen Usellis, get on this. And so I was like, okay, I put out a message. I was like, has anybody translated this song? And immediately one of my friends in the language community said, I think that Felix Malmenbeck translated that song. You should get in touch with Felix. So they got me in touch with Felix. Felix had translated Let It Go. And I was like, amazing. This was song number 4. This is what I need now for an EP. And so I started putting all of the pieces together to get it produced. I enlisted a recording studio and a sound engineer that I'd worked with previously.
Yeah.
I had musicians. I had a concept. I was like, I want this very simple, very acoustic. I don't want any, I want it very warrior vibe. Like, let's like keep it really simple. I joke that Klingon music theory is like we hit shit with sticks and see what it sounds like. So like I don't need fancy guitar solos and stuff like that. Like just keep it really simple, and we're just gonna let the vocals and the language do the heavy lifting of the humor. And then I got a couple other songs. Like I found out that there was a translation of Love is a Battlefield and a translation of Bad Romance by Lady Gaga. So I was like, okay, I've got 6 songs now.
That's solid. Yeah.
I was able to do some stretch goals because like I pay for my song rights. I make sure that I go and I pay for song rights. I pay my musicians. I pay my translators. Getting CDs produced isn't cheap. The song rights cost almost as much as it costs, if not as much, to produce like 100 CDs. It's like the song rights cost as much as that. Like
so that means like, is it Ask Me? Is it at the like Association of Composers and Music? Like when you pay for song rights, are you paying like Disney to be able to use a Frozen song? Like I didn't invite you on to talk about copyright law but like what does that mean? I pay for song rights.
So there's websites out there that will do the mechanical licensing for you. And so I use those. Now I'm kind of in this weird, funny gray area because a lot of the lyrics get changed intentionally. Like when I translate the song, I do cultural translations first and then do the Klingon translation along with it. And so like if I'm singing like in what's a good example? Oh, No Scrubs, the line hanging out the passenger side of his best friend's ride. Okay, well that doesn't make any sense to Klingons because Klingons don't drive cars and they don't drive drop tops and they don't, so for me, the line is translated to excessively hailing from my friend's bird of prey, this ship, basically. So he's trying to excessively get my attention. And so I'm doing these cultural translations, which really at the end of the day become parody. And so, but there's also like weird stuff with translation. Is it derivative? Is it parody? What I'm doing? Like, so I pay for mechanical licensing, knowing full well that at some point I may get, like, in the case of Let It Go, Disney actually came to me and were like, hey, did you get rights to do this? And I was like, here's my licensing. And they're like, actually, we consider you derivative, but we're really glad you made the effort. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Next time we're going to let these stand. And the next time you need rights, just get in touch with this person here and we'll take care of it all for you. Great.
That's amazing. Like that is the best possible Disney outcome.
The best
right?
possible. And I'm such small potatoes to them. I mean, I'm not out there like selling hundreds of thousands of copies a week or anything like that. So
Okay, so now I have another question.
yeah.
You've said two things that make me curious. So, like, one is like your music theory of what Klingon music would be,
Yeah.
and you're doing cultural translation first. This seems to me like at some point you watched a little more Star Trek, or you got a little more involved in the Klingon community. Like, where did you get to a place where you had a point of view on how Klingons would make their music, or the like appropriate cultural translation?
I started watching The Next Gen. And what's so funny to me about Next Generation is that I usually say that Worf is one of the worst Klingons, and only because like Worf is actually really interesting because Worf is coming from sort of a diaspora, really. Like he was a Klingon raised by humans, and so all of his ideas and notions about, and hopefully I use the right word, I think that would be in the diaspora. He's not like, and so all of his notions about Klingons are from this like lens of sort of like uber reverence,
Yeah.
and like insane, and sort of like insane, almost like just purist. He's always like, a Klingon would not do this and a Klingon would not do that. And meanwhile, Klingons in the background are like drinking and partying and like, you know, and just kind of like all over everything. And like,
It's a little bit like a transracial adoption.
Yeah.
Right? Where like white parents adopt Black children from other countries, and so they try to raise them with reverence for the culture they came from, but they don't know the culture.
Right.
Okay.
And so, yeah, Worf as a Klingon he's just really interesting to me. And so when I was doing Klingon Christmas Carol, I was watching all of the Klingon centric episodes to get an idea of what a Klingon mother would be like, and what since I was playing a Klingon mother, and so I was watching all of these episodes, and you just kind of get this feel for Klingons and this warrior culture. And there's an immediacy to Klingons that I just love, because as a warrior culture, they have that, and the language itself embodies this too. So their motto is "Cher lumech kach jajvam." Today is a good day to die, and when your entire existence is that present and in the moment, everything about you is in the moment. And so, like, you know, a lot of people are like, well, Klingons fight hard and they're mean. And I was like, no, Klingons aren't mean. They just have no time for niceties. Like they are, do you have a question? Ask your damn question and let's go and kill our enemy. Like it's very much, they love hard as well as fight hard. They, live hard because why would you not if today might be your last day on Earth as you go down in, a fiery battle and, and onward to Stovacor, I love that because I get as somebody with anxiety too. I love that because it gets you out of your head a little bit. You stop thinking about shit so hard. A lot there. I think I just covered a lot there. Sorry.
That was fantastic. So you go to the Klingon centric episodes, you learn more about them through that. At some point, you've also built connections into the Klingon language community. And do you now identify as part of that community? Like, I
do. I'm a lifetime member of the Klingon Language Institute. I count some of the members of the KLI as they are as good friends. I'm so proud to know some of the folks that I know and just like I have like just such pride and I really lucked out because when I did Kiss Me, one of the things that with that in the fact that it has as many views as it does now, if you go and you look at it, the number of likes to like the thumbs up to thumbs down, overwhelmingly positive. Like, and the comments on it are overwhelmingly positive. There's even the one or two people who tried to troll it got shut down pretty hard because they're like, are you kidding me? Would you like listen to what's happening here? And people, there were some folks who even tried to come for my pronunciation as well. And I definitely mispronounced one or two things here and there, but they were like nitpicking on how I said my duh sound. So the capital D is sort of like it's supposed to be more like a g rather than duh. Like it's further back than forward. So they were trying to come at me for like little nitpicky pronunciation things, and people in the Klingon language community who I didn't know at that point were coming to my defense and being like, "Are you kidding me? This is the best pronounced Klingon that is on the internet right now." And like, sit down and shut up and let her do her thing. And so I had already had a level of established cred, I guess.
Okay,
you know, with the community because of that video. So it became a lot easier for me. And then I'd met people because of doing Klingon Christmas Carol. I was able to go to people and that I'd worked with. We had language instructors come in to teach us the language. So we actually got crash courses in the grammar and stuff like that. So we could parse out our lines for the show.
Yeah.
So I already had a rudimentary knowledge.
Okay.
But I was not like studying the language super hardcore, and I didn't really start studying the language really hard until probably like 2016. And then I started to really like get into it because I'm like, I want to translate my own songs.
Yeah. So is it 2015 that you do the EP, your first Kickstarter? Or
yes.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it was like the end of 2014 and it released. And actually what's so crazy is I broke my ankle at the beginning of 2015. So I had all kinds of stuff lined up to like promote it. I did the Kickstarter. I got it all released. It released technically November of 2014. So right before Christmas. And I was like lining stuff up for 2015. I was lining up conventions and lining up, and stuff like that. Because conventions book like a year out.
Sure.
So you have to kind of like get your stuff in or you miss your window.
Yeah.
And February, I blame Rahm Emanuel, as I like to say. I was walking to the polls to vote against him in the mayoral election. And I slipped on ice and I broke my ankle. And I was so busy and just everything came crashing down. And we didn't have like this year, you've got Zoom, you've got Discord, you've got like so many things. And so I really didn't get to start promoting it until the end of 2015, beginning of 2016.
Okay, so you do your first EP, you're out for a year. 2016, you get to start promoting it, and you start going to like Comic Cons, to Star Trek Con. Like, what does promoting a Klingon EP look like?
Yeah, so it was really hard to sell it as a performance for a while. So what I was actually doing was submitting myself to conventions as a panelist. And I'm like, I'm going to do a panel about my project. And that was how my entire project in getting myself in front of people was basically leaving the door open at conventions and instead of going through the music tracks, going through the panel tracks instead to get myself in front of people because I was having a lot of trouble getting and the other problem too was that I didn't have, at that point, I only really had 6 songs. So I didn't have like an hour-long set with 10 or 11 songs. And, I only had these 6 songs. So I was like, I've got to figure out another way to get in front of people. So it was basically doing panels, using panels as a way to get in.
So you can do panels about like translation of sci-fi languages. You can do panels about Kickstarter. You can do panels about recording. So you've got like some different tactics there.
Right.
And then you get on stage and you're like, and I'm an expert because I've recorded this EP
right.
and I'm doing this translation.
Right. And I'm like, and I'm going to sing this song for you now. And like here, and I would basically like put myself in as the only I would submit the panel idea and I would be the only panelist. It would be me and my guitar player were the panelists. And then we would go in and we would do a performance and I would talk about it. It was definitely like, I was very like, and I did a lot of podcasts. I did tons of podcasts, Trek podcasts, Trek radio, Krypton radio, like a lot of the online radio stations and things like that. And I just started shoving myself into conversations. And just, I was like, I'm going to just make room for myself at this table.
Well done.
And it's slow. Like I try really hard because like, I could get an agent and I could pay for likes and subscribes and, and all of those things. But I that's not me. And I want the people who come to find me to be into it. And not only that, like I want to surprise people because one of the reasons that I've stuck with pop songs and not like people are like, "Whoa, would you want to do originals?" And I'm like, "No, not really. That's not what this project is about."
Yeah.
And it's about pop songs that are recognizable. Right. So that you don't have to give a shit about Klingons. You don't have to care about the Klingon language. You don't even have to like Star Trek to just get a kick out of what I'm doing. You can just be a nerd and like be like, have you heard this crazy woman singing in Klingon? And then, that, and some people will be like, well, that's dumb. And then they hear it and they're like, holy crap, she sounds really good. And you're like, yes. I want people to laugh with me, not laugh at me. That's always been really important to me.
Yeah.
So.
And didn't you do a cruise? Or you were supposed to do a cruise and then COVID hit, or?
So I've gone on the Star Trek cruise 3 times.
Yeah.
And I have been trying so hard to get my foot in the door on the Star Trek cruise as a performer, especially now that I've been on it. I'm like, there is a place for me and on this cruise. But I'm probably at this point going to have to actually get an agent if I want to like kick that foot down. Although I actually have kind of a fun story about this most recent one. So the last cruise was right before COVID. We were getting on a ship on March 1st and we came back to this new world order.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And nobody that I know of got COVID on the cruise. It was, they already had some travel restrictions in place at that point. So nobody who got on the cruise, like they were checking temperatures and all of those things. So, it's possible there were people who had COVID on the cruise. But it really wasn't like super widespread in the States at that point yet.
Right.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, it was so I did the cruise, and every year that I've gone, I've hustled the cruise talent show. And 2 years ago was crazy because Jason Isaacs was sitting like less than 10 feet away from me. And
who is Jason Isaacs?
Jason Isaacs, a lot of people know Jason Isaacs because he plays Lucius Malfoy in the Harry Potter movies. So he's Draco's dad. He's on the new Star Trek Discovery. However, in season one, he plays Captain Lorca in Star Trek Discovery. Unsettlingly handsome man in person, beautiful blue eyes, and he was less than 10 feet in front of me while I'm singing "Don't Stop Believin'" on the pool deck of the cruise ship, where there are just hundreds of people, and I'm like, I am gonna win this thing.
And are you singing? Are you in? Like you said, Klingon Ridges earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Are you like in full cosplay for it?
Yeah, I packed all my cosplay. I brought my backing tracks with me, and like I hustled it, and then I did it again this year. This year I did "My Heart Will Go On," and what was
amazing on a cruise ship.
On a cruise ship, I joked when I said it. I was like, "This is probably going to be my last cruise for a while," and so I'm like, this seems like an appropriate song to do, and what was so crazy was this past year the judges were Roxanne Dawson, who plays B'Elanna Torres, who's a Klingon character on Star Trek Voyager, and Mary Chieffo and Kenneth Mitchell, who were two of the main Klingon characters from Star Trek Discovery. So my panel of judges for this year's cruise were all Klingons, and I was like, oh,
nice.
I tied with a guy who did a really beautiful original song, and I couldn't fault him. We were working two totally different sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
And we were both winners. Which was amazing. But yeah, one of the big things, and I don't know if this is digression and you can totally just delete this, but John Van Sitters, who's the VP of Star Trek branding for CBS Viacom, was on the cruise this year.
Okay.
And he followed me on Twitter, and after the cruise was over, I was like, I really need to like reach out and figure out what I need to do to make sure that I stay on the up and up with CBS.
Right.
And because last year Let It Go went viral, the Nerdist picked it up, and it was everywhere.
Yeah.
And I was like, I really need to just figure this out and make this happen. And I'd also last year got to sing with Mary Chieffo at a convention. She learned the harmony to No Scrubs and sang No Scrubs with me at a convention.
Wow.
And she is a delight. She is so great. But so like people in the Star Trek world, they know who I am. The head translator for the Klingon translator for Star Trek Discovery is part of the Klingon Language Institute, Robin Stewart. So like we have all of these connections, and I was like, I need to reach out. So I reached out to John Van Sitters this year, and about a week after we got back from the cruise, and I was like, I don't know what I need to do. Tell me what I need to do as far as licensing. I want to make sure that I am not stepping on any toes, because I do kind of use the word Klingon in my name.
Right.
and so he's like, I don't, I reached out to him. It was a really good email. He emailed me back very quickly. Like I was floored. And I'm like, I would love to just be a brand ambassador or a fan ambassador or something, like, anything that I can do to help, spread the glory of the Klingon language. And he said, he goes, I don't want you to be scared of the fact that I know who you are, but I know who you are.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, and I do like what you're doing, and we do have to be a little bit careful. Right around this time, actually, CBS Paramount and was actually merging with Viacom. So like a lot of things were happening at the beginning of this year. And then COVID happened. So my hope is that, maybe I can get myself on the next Star Trek cruise as an actual guest in some capacity, and which there isn't going to be one in 2021. So maybe in 2022. And I've been trying so hard to like get my foot in the door, but they're kind of closed, and I'm just like, do I really want an agent? That seems like a lot of work. Like, just...
Right. Right. I mean, it would be. What is the Star Trek equivalent of the cantina?
It's like 10 forward. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it just seems like, couldn't you get one? You're not saying it, I'm saying it. So like, powers that be, I'm saying that it would be really cool to see you in an episode and like where they're in the 10 forward and you've come in as a you're performing for a week on the ship.
On the ship.
And then right, like on the show or in one of the upcoming movies, even if it's just like like one lounge singer scene.
Right. Just get me in the background. I would take, you know what? I would take being cartoonified in Lower Decks. Like, that's good enough for me. That's like, take one of my tracks and shove me in Lower Decks. I would like I don't need to be canon though. I know what I'm doing. I'm like, I'm happy enough in my own little strange world.
Yeah. And then at what point did you start? But like, you've done some super intense, like the costumes that you've been working on and the complexity, I feel like, of your costumes, the skill it's taking to put them together is tremendous. So like, at what point did you go from, like, I've got the Klingon ridges and I'm wearing like a funny pink dress to like doing more cosplay, and like, when does that come in along with the performances and the EPs and the music? Yeah.
So with the first EP, when I was working on the first EP, I was preparing for it. The final weekend of my Kickstarter was going to fall over a convention down by St. Louis. So I decided I was going to go down to that convention. And not only was that convention happening, but it was the 25th anniversary of the Klingon Assault Group, which is a Klingon fan, like a Klingon fan cosplay group. And so that was happening, and they were holding their general assembly at this convention. So I was like, this will be great. It's the last weekend of my Kickstarter. I can go get a panel maybe, and I can play people the music. I can like promote it. Maybe I can get a handful more donations in and backers before the weekend's over. Like, that would be really cool. And they were doing a costume contest for Best Original Series Klingon.
Okay.
And so I was like, I'm gonna sew me a costume. And so I'd gotten a couple different things, but I was like, I'm gonna figure out the original series Klingon look, because I wouldn't need the original series Klingons didn't have ridges or anything like that. So I went, and there's a character, Mara, and Mara is the wife of Kang, and she is the chief. I think she's like chief science officer technically. For the Klingon ship, and she appears in one episode of the original series, and she's got this crazy hair, and she's got this great gold little like one piece thing, and it's got mesh, and like, it's just, I was like, I'm gonna build that.
Okay.
And so I looked at it, and I kind of deconstructed it, and I found just her outfit was actually shorts, but I'm like, I'm going to a convention. I don't want to have to like zip in and zip out of a thing every time I got to pee. So it was like, I'm going to build myself a little tunic and that's similar to it. And I managed to find a great fabric. I went like fabric hunting. I was like, I'm going to find something that's like really cool and looks as similar as possible. And I figured out how to make the sleeves and make them gold with like spray paint and setting, and like it just, and then it kind of aged it a little bit because of the spray paint not hitting all the places. I was like, all this stuff. And like, I had only sewn back in like 8th grade.
Okay.
My husband's like, if you want to do this, let's get you a sewing machine. So we bought me a sewing machine, and me and YouTube, man, we like figured it out. And,
wow.
And so I built this little costume, and I won the costume contest. I won best female TOS. And like, I was so proud of myself. And so I put my sewing machine away, and I actually also built a dress for the Pop Warrior. So I built something, and it was more simple.
Sure.
It was a really simple skirt that was only like a 4-piece skirt, and but it draped really cool. And then I had this costume, this like silly like costume that I'd gotten from like a costume, just like a Halloween costume thing that I like deconstructed a little bit and like sewed back together and attached to the skirt. But it worked. It was, like it got me what I needed. And then like I started sewing a little bit more, and I built like I used the same skirt pattern. That skirt pattern, I've gotten so much mileage out of that skirt pattern. I've built like 3 or 4 different skirts with that same pattern. And my thought for the Pop Warrior costuming was always like, I don't need it to be screen accurate. I don't care about screen accuracy.
Yeah.
I just want, like, what would a Klingon rock star wear? And so like, yeah, like push up the boobs, get a nice corset in, like that's functional, that I can still kick in. I've got a skirt that gives me lots of like leg room. My arms I usually, the sleeves that I use have the fur, but they're elastic, like thick elastic at the top, so they like can stay up or come off really easily as needed. So it's like just sort of a piecemeal costume that I can just change little bits out as I like want to like fashion it up. And then I decided I love, after I finished watching Next Gen, because I started watching it during the Kickstarter and finished it, I fell in love with Beverly Crusher. And that was when I decided I was going to build. I found out Gates McFadden was coming to the Chicago Star Trek convention. And I'm like, I'm going to build a Beverly Crusher cosplay. And I'm going to get my picture taken with Gates McFadden.
Nice.
And so the costumes that I have built, which is the Beverly Crusher, and then I did the Captain Janeway Austen, which was a great my mashup of Captain Janeway and Jane Austen. And then I did the Klingon Elsa, a Klingon version of Elsa from Frozen because of the song. And but the Janeway and the Crusher, those are both characters that I love in Star Trek. Janeway is the first female captain that has her own show, and she's just awesome and powerful and just
what show is she in?
Voyager.
Okay.
Star Trek Voyager. And she doesn't take any crap. So like if you want an entryway and like a gateway into Star Trek, and you're looking and you can't handle like Shatner, like go for Janeway. And so I'm like, they were women who I really loved. And I don't do like the photo ops at conventions and stuff like that so much. Like that doesn't really interest me. But if I build a costume, I'm gonna try to get my picture taken with that, with that person, because like that's it. And so I managed on the cruise, I got to get my picture taken in my Janeway costume with Kate Mulgrew this year, and that was just she was only on the cruise for like 2 days, 3 days, and she spent so much time in photo ops, bless her heart. But she was beautiful. I was just like, I love you. Same thing
that's
happened
fantastic.
with Gates. Yeah. So yeah, but it was really a natural progression. I figured out how to sew one thing, and then I was like, I'm going to figure out how to sew this, and then I'm going to figure out. I'm a jack of all trades and a master of none of them. Like I half-ass everything really well.
I know this won't be the first COVID produced album, but I think, as you look at I have some people I know in a band called Nefesh Mountain, which is a Jewish folk Jewish bluegrass band. So they did like a quarantine. Everybody quarantined, got negative COVID tests, and then went to a studio. So like that's one way of handling it, but that is a huge travel investment, testing investment, still a fair amount of risk. So you were able to keep people safe and at home. And so did you record like, I don't know, do you send them like a metronome? I mean, they have metronomes, but like, what's it called? Like a tick-tock?
Oh, like a I know what you're talking about. I can't.
How do they all stay in time?
That's
click track. But even more, I want to know, what was your sound engineer was Jim?
His name is John Abbey. Yeah, over at King Size Studios here in Chicago. Yeah.
Does he speak Klingon?
Oh, no, not at all.
Does he regularly mix for languages he doesn't speak, or is this like his biggest puzzle yet?
I imagine this is quite a puzzle for him. What's really been fun is the first play that I've done this with a couple different sound engineers now.
Yeah.
And they just get it. I don't know. Like they've worked with all kinds of different music, from metal to hip hop to, to folk to rock, and and everything in between. And everybody who touches this project gets such a kick out of it musically, because it's so goofy. It's like the goofiest covers project. And it's nice because there's no, like, as long as I give him a good clean vocal track, like, that's all he needs from me. And he just lets it happen. I don't even know what goes on in the mind of a sound engineer when they're mixing something like this. But I imagine he's got to get a kick out of it. I know that he was excited when I reached out to him. He was like, let me know. I sent him the first one. He's like, let me know when you're ready to send me the next one.
That's
and
fantastic.
We've just been doing them one at a time, and they sound like, they sound great. Everybody's home studio setups. It's amazing what you can do in a home studio nowadays. And the musicians who I worked with, they all kind of took care of their own song. So like when I worked with a group called the Faithful Sidekicks. They're fantastic. They're a husband and wife duo, and they did 2 of the songs. And so I told them, I was like, this is kind of what I have in mind for Maneater. I'd like to do it as a ballad, keep it acoustic. Boom, done. Just send me whatever, and I'll figure out how to sing over it. Like, you do the arrangement and I'll figure out how to sing over it. And so that's been it's been fun to like get things back from people too, and be like, oh, what do I get to try to sing over today? It's like, I'll be like, I've given them maybe like little bits of things about the tempo. I've found other acoustic arrangements online where I'm like, I kind of like this, but this arrangement for this, but I like this one for this. So like, just to give them an idea of what's going on in my weird head. And like, I actually ended up, I have no instrumental talent whatsoever. It's one of my biggest frustrations. I just cannot make my hands do 2 things at one time. I've tried to learn guitar and piano, and like, it just never goes well. But nobody who's listening to this can see it, but you can probably see the little MIDI
a keyboard. Yeah,
there's a little MIDI keyboard behind me. I got that little MIDI keyboard, and I actually built one of the arrangements myself.
Wow,
for this EP. Like, when I joke, like, literally, jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
Like, it was the most basic bitch recording, but it's, of course, it's for Lizzo's Good as Hell, which feels even worse. I'm doing it in Klingon, but then like, to be doing that track so basic bitch felt so bad. That's actually the next to last track that I sent to John, and I sent it to him going, look, this needs help. I did this, and this. Anything you want to add, because John plays bass and drums.
Okay.
And so
he can like round it out.
Yes. And I was like, please, dear God, do with this. I will pay you through the nose to make this sound good. Like, name your price.
Oh, that is amazing. That's so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took, because I started out a music major at Millikan. I changed my major so fast.
That music department was intense.
It was intense. I took class piano.
If that was anything like class voice, I know why you quit.
Yeah. I mean, I can still play like C major chord progressions. Bum, 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 bum. I can't play any other scales, although I could when I was 19. But I took, Matt West was in my class piano.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Overachiever.
But I like one of my very clear memories is both of us like sitting in the hallway outside of the finals and just crying, being so stressed out. This is going to be so hard. And he's done all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's figured it out.
Yeah.
So I like to think of that when I think about like learning curves. And mine was because I played oboe. My goal when I went into college was to become the first female conductor of a major symphony orchestra that hadn't yet had a female conductor yet.
Oh, that's a lofty goal. I love it.
It was I was a drum major in high school, so I loved conducting.
Yeah.
But the amount of work to get back to where you're allowed to conduct, there's a big career in there of like composing and music theory and pianos. And I went to a master class with all the oboe players, and we were in a coffee shop, and there were these like two like real old women who were probably like 30, so old, talking about making oboe reeds and like where they got their reed from, what knife did they use? Because when you play oboe, you have to make your own reeds. Like you have to become a woodworker.
Oh my God.
And I just looked at them and I was like, I can't be old talking about oboe reeds. That can't be what I was like, that can't be my future of having really intense conversations about like bamboo supply chain.
So that you can play your instrument.
And so that is why I'm not the first female conductor of a major symphony orchestra.
Well, I don't know. I feel like the world is both less for that, but also it would be less were you not doing what you're doing. So
thank you.
You know.
Yeah, it was but now I'm 43 and I regularly tell this story and I'm like, but it came true. I'm a grown-up woman talking about oboe reeds and bamboo supply chain.
Full circle. My 5-year plan was to, I had a 5-year plan when I moved to the Twin Cities, and that was to, like, within 5 years, I was going to move back to Chicago. I wanted to move up there. I wanted to take improv classes with Brave New Workshop up there and do an improv with Comedy Sports up there, and then move back to Chicago, go to the second city, and, like, get famous and get on SNL. That was my, and here I am singing pop songs in Klingon. So
there's a podcast I listen to, the Jackie and Laurie Show with Jackie Cation and Laurie Kilmartin, who are both women in their 50s who have been doing stand-up comedy, road comics for 30 years. And they were saying, if you can imagine doing something else with your life, like, then stand-up comedy is not for you.
Right.
If you only do it if it truly consumes you. And because I also tried stand-up comedy in my 20s. And again, a couple years ago when I got laid off, I was like, hey, I don't have to watch my mouth anymore. I don't work in PR. Like I don't work for brands. I can say whatever I want. So I tried doing stand-up comedy again. And then I heard them say that. And I was like, yeah, it's fun. Like, it's nice party trivia that, like, once I did stand-up comedy and it made me unafraid of nothing in a boardroom scares me because I have been at an open mic at the Cubby Bear.
Right. Yeah.
Nothing is scarier than, like, the Cubby Bear, truly.
I've sung on the Cubby Bear stage, and that's a judgy audience no matter what's going on at the Cubby Bear. It is judgy. It is judgy. So, well, where can people find you online? Where should we find this Kickstarter when it launches in a couple weeks?
tell me all the links.
So the best link to find me is KlingonPopWarrior.com, www.KlingonPopWarrior.com. Is easily one of the best places for news and upcoming stuff. You can sign up for my mailing list. I will absolutely email out. I don't spam mailing lists. I barely send out emails once a month because I'm terrible at self-promotion and in that regard. And then I'm on Twitter, /Klingon Pop. I also have started streaming on Twitch regularly. I love video games, and
we didn't even talk about Extra Life. You do like a ton of fundraising every year for Children Miracle Network, right?
Yes, yeah. So I do Extra Life every year, which I started doing when I broke my ankle in 2015 because I started playing a lot of video games when I was non-weight bearing for 13 weeks, and got back into gaming. So I play video games. So I'm on Twitch, twitch.tv/Klingon Pop Warrior, and I stream on Tuesday evenings Central Time and Saturday mornings. I'm playing Mass Effect on Saturday mornings right now, and I've been playing Star Trek Online on Tuesday nights, which is like a Star Trek MMO. I rage quit it so many times in the past. I finally made it past the tutorial. Seriously, I tried playing this game at least twice a year for probably like once or twice a year for about 5 years. And I rage quit every time. And this year somebody like helped me get past the tutorial stage. And now I'm having the time of my life.
Fantastic.
And so, yeah, I started a fleet. We're the purple fleet. I'm making all of my ships purple. They're all Klingon purple Klingon ships.
Nice.
Just to be real obnoxious. So, yeah, so that's a thing that I do. So, you can find information on my website about all of those things. And yeah, if you sign up for my email list, I will email when it goes live. But the goal is to get the Kickstarter live on the 1st. I'm going to be editing the video for it.
Well, Jen, this has been a blast. It's so exciting. I love seeing what other Millikan people are up to in the world. And the combination of like other Millikan people and my online friends, like we've just been like so aware of each other thanks to social media. And so it was really, I love getting to catch up and talk to you.
Agreed. This has been delightful. I hope I don't bore people with my love of Klingons and Star Trek and singing in Klingon.
On your Kickstarter video, and I am excited for the launch on January 1st.
Thank you, Leah.
Thank you for listening to Finding Favorites with Leah Jones. Please make sure to subscribe and drop us a 5-star review on iTunes. Now, go out and enjoy your favorite things.